We are live, America Heals. Starting out tonight with a little bit of boat sinking.
Boat sinking, yes.
Little ship. Oh my God.
Yeah. I especially like that the propellers are still spinning. I don't really know what's going on. I think they lost control of their barge, but we're still somehow tethered to it.
You're like, what kind of hitch do you have on that deal? Oh no. The amount of displacement. Look at that. Wow.
Yeah, that one's a big boat to go down.
The music is just perilous.
Isn't it great? Now this is obviously, several of these are scuttling. You know, it's obvious they were scuttling this ship.
Yeah. I was thinking this looks a little like Benicia.
This one's pretty cool. At the end, a hatch blows open. Right as it's about to go underwater, a hatch blows off, the forehatch. Right now.
Oh, wow.
See the hatch come up?
Catches some air. Oh, it's got air inside of it. Buoyant.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's hollow, you know, steel with a hollow center, and it was just buoyant. It just floated off.
We always like to start out our shows with some enlightening physics experiments or some sort of catastrophic moment for someone, and that almost looks fake.
I think that was, again, a decommissioning. You can see the Coast Guard. I believe we've sunk several large ships to create reefs in certain places. It looked to me like they'd cut big holes every, eighth of the way along the boat or whatever. I know we've done that before. I've seen footage where they're like this one. Obviously, they're all there to watch it get scuttled.
Yeah,
but this one's cool because look how clear the water is.
You can drop it in there and make a reef. That's crazy. It makes sense.
Yes, I think that's what they're doing in these. Is they're scuttling them to create like a habitat.
Oh wow! Then the charges go off. Look at that.
I think that was just air coming out of the cabin. I think that was just air.
Well, something had to change.
Oh, I don't think so. I think when you have that much steel and then fill it with water. Now this one I can't tell. I think they were trying to keep the bags on it so it would land on the bottom flat. I'm not really sure what they were doing here. It seems like they put buoyancy bags on it, but they seem to be breaking off, and I don't know. I'm kind of confused. And it obviously just still nosedives, so I don't know what the bags are trying to do. Maybe just set it down easy. I don't know.
Stuff you don't see every day and find yourself looking at on the internet. Thank you, Twitter. Thank you, YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This is America Heals. And I'm pretty sure the boats keep sinking all day long because that's part of...
It's a couple-minute video. Yeah, we don't have to watch.
Oh, no, I don't know. We can just... This is a great segue.
This one sinks pretty nice. Be a good place to stop right after this one sinks.
I don't know, man. On quite a few of those, it looks like when they really start going, there's something that explodes or pops.
No, I think it's the chamber's been filled with water.
Something's full all the way at that point.
It's pressurizing.
Okay.
And blowing out the hatch.
This is bad.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
This is a guy who says, I believed in Trump. He says,
This is one of the Trump boat rides
with him, and I knew there was no collusion.
Isn't there video of actual Trump parade boats sinking?
Yes,
there is.
Yes, sir.
That's just a pure coincidence.
This is just one of those moments in time. Oh no!
I believe this is another scuttling because the cargo bay hatch is missing.
Just lay him on the side.
Which I believe would make it not seaworthy. And the guy with the really nice camera is another telltale sign. and the tugboat.
And all the other boats. Everybody's like, wow, look at
4
that.
other boats.
Went down quick. That's great.
Oh, this is a huge boat. And it doesn't have any containers, although it might be an oil. I can't tell what that is on the deck. I think it's those cages for the ocean containers. So I think this is a huge ocean container ship. So yeah, I think that's just... I think you basically get a major siphon effect going. I think you just get a major siphon. Once it finally starts to sink, like the water is rushing in so fast that it actually blows through.
Thanks everybody for starting out the show with us with some boats going down. It's springtime and we're here in Boulder County and right now everything's going well, but we have been having some power outages earlier in the evening because we've got some snow that just came down in the afternoon, and that's what happens when you live near the mountains. So it comes and it goes that fast. So, you know which boat hasn't sunk? America Heals. That's right. We're still floating around, still chug-a-lugging, figuring it out.
Like 16 weeks later.
Dude, congratulations, everybody. Zach, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Enjoying the beautiful sunny day in California.
Still, there we are.
It's raining here. Just to complete the weather updates. Although we're really dry in the Midwest, so I'm not going to complain about the rain.
Need it all. Need every bit of it. Yeah. Jeff, what's going on in your world?
Wow, that's a great question. It's going to be a weird day tomorrow because we have to get up. My daughter's been home all year for school. Tomorrow we have to get up and actually get to the physical school an hour before it would normally start, so that from school from home kids can go in and get their school pictures taken. And if anybody's a parent, if you don't get your school picture taken, it's like a year of their life gone. And my stepdad makes a photo album. He makes this album where every year there is like a chapter. And anyway, it's this big thing. So it's like, I got to get one. I got to get at least that one picture for my stepdad. So yeah. And of course I got to take my son because my wife's working. So I'll be taking my son and my daughter, probably in the rain, probably about 40 degrees. So it should be very, very interesting.
And you haven't used these muscles in so long, right? Like that's what I'm finding when I have to step back into the world and do one thing. It's like, holy shit, am I out of practice?
Right. And of course we have to do it at the front door. Our school is on a very busy street. So you end up parking basically behind the school and have to walk around the school. And so by the time you do that, it's only probably a block longer to just walk down from my house. But then, you can imagine you're walking there and, some car comes through a puddle and sprays your daughter on the way to pictures or what, I'm just, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts.
Got a lot to protect to get to the pictures.
Yeah. And of course I had to run around yesterday to get my taxes paid. The annual taxes were bumped a year, but the quarterlies are still due April 15th today, which is kind of bizarre. My mother-in-law was arguing with me, but my CPA says, first quarter estimates are due now. I mean, I guess they just give you leeway. Like you could just pay last year's estimates if you wanted to. But anyway, so I had to pay my quarterlies, although it looks like my annuals are going to come out really close, which is nice. We've paid quarterlies before and then had to pay basically a fifth quarter at annual tax time. And that's very painful. Yeah. When your taxes end up 25% higher than you expected. That's no fun.
Times. Yeah,
that is no planning.
Fun. Lack of planning can bite you on that day. That's for sure.
Well, we're pretty frugal people. Our cash flows are okay, but suddenly cutting a check for $22,000 or something is no fun.
Yeah.
At all. Just when you thought your savings was growing, and then
I think I can. No, I can't. Okay.
Yeah, I think we might be able to do that driveway project this year. Nope. There goes $22,000.
Speaking of which, for those who care, Dogecoin is making news tonight. It hit 30 cents, which is unbelievable. And I don't even know how to talk about this crypto stuff, but it's absolutely all over the internet. People are talking about it everywhere.
It seems like the verge.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's a fine line between brilliant and nonsense. I can't bridge the gap from one to the other. They've got these guys that have these like converted ocean containers with all fans and all these microcomputers that are hacking Bitcoin, and you're just sitting there thinking, how can you afford to invest in this huge bank of computers to try and decrypt a cryptocurrency that you say has value, but yet people are actively decrypting.
But those computers,
it's just like my head's like,
Zach's ready to just lay
A lot
down
of
some
stuff.
knowledge on our ass. Okay, I'll just be quiet. Zach,
I
go
don't
ahead.
see how it's gonna be more stable than gold if it can be decrypted by a dude in Nebraska.
But it's not being okay. Well, I don't know if it's
It's being unlocked.
I-
I mean, that's what they're doing right there.
I don't have a lot of technical knowledge on cryptocurrency, but what I do know is it's kind of a waste of everyone's time.
That's
The
what it
second
feels
that
like.
the US government decides it's gone, it's gone. So it's not a stable currency. It's not something, from my knowledge, it's not something anyone should actually put their money into. So
Yeah, with that whole Silk Road thing,
that's my take.
Well, it's an interesting thing I've read about is that if you deal with it as a currency, that's correct. But if you deal with it as an investment of buying something, like I bought this mug and I bought this thing called a Bitcoin. If you deal with it that way, it's a much different animal.
Yeah, but it's also a bit like collecting Beanie Babies. When the market falls out, even though you've got all these Beanie Babies that you paid $50 for, when the market falls out, you don't have anything. The Beanie Baby itself doesn't have any intrinsic value that recoups your expenditure. You've literally bought a serial number when you buy Bitcoin. And so you've literally got access to a serial number that therefore reserves that coin to you. I got,
Yeah,
so I can hand you this key to unlock this coin that I have, and that's worth something to you. Again, yeah, could I get it for $5 and sell it for 20? Sure, but like Zach was saying, it could also become illegal tomorrow and be worthless.
Yes.
Or it could be broad-scaledly decrypted by some genius and be worthless because they'd all of a sudden all be in the hands of one person or something. I mean, it's just none of it makes a lot of sense to me at all. So we could definitely move on. But I just think it's funny. It reminds me a lot of sort of the QAnon types because it's like they tell you, these people that are into these cryptos, they'll say things like, well, cash is a fiat currency. It doesn't have anything. It has no intrinsic value either, and blah, 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 blah. So I've got this magic decimal coin. And it's like, well, that's also a fiat currency. I mean, I don't, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like the only people that win that argument to me are people that are like, I'm buying gold. Because when I buy an ounce of gold, right now it's worth $1,300. Its 20-year low is $800. It's never going to be worth $0. People are always going to want gold. That argument makes sense to me. The cash model makes sense to me. Some third thing, I can't help but think, again, to me, it stinks of Beanie Babies or Super Bowl tickets or anything else that could either have value or suddenly not have value.
Right. I love this conversation. Zach, go for it.
And the US dollar, right, that's backed by the US government. And the US government is backed by the US military. So there's like a chain of backing behind all of this. With cryptocurrency, there's nothing backing it.
So, right. And in a worst case scenario, too, the federal government could stop inflation in certain ways. They could basically require companies stop raising their prices. They could lock in a currency from completely destabilizing. In my opinion, there's ways that the Treasury could stop if suddenly inflation started to go crazy. We've learned those lessons, from World War II and other times. Right. But yeah, Bitcoin, I mean, it's completely unregulated. Like, it's just, I don't know. Again, I think as a hobby, somebody who's bought a few, has a few, maybe they're invested for $100 and they think they've got it up to $600 or whatever. Well, good for you. That sounds fun. Anyone who's investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into supercomputers to hack Bitcoin, I fear you may have literally bought the world's most expensive space heater. And I don't know.
Interesting.
They're talking about how all these computers are causing power drains. Literally, there's so many people trying to harvest Bitcoins that there's so many computers running that it literally is causing extra power usage in our grids.
But there is a piece of it that is sort of necessary, though, because of the way that the blockchain computing works. Is that actually what those little computers are doing? Is they're finishing equations that are sitting out there left to be finished. There's a whole bunch of individual banking and individual communication that's happening inside of that, but it's not all done. And so you set up your little, whether you set up a shipping container or you put a coat rack together or something, and you put a couple computers together, you're online and you're finishing those computing systems that are out there in that web. Basically they're saying that if you have 25% of your computer that's not being used in the next 5 to 10 years, other people will be using it because it's just all computing will be happening.
Yeah.
So we're talking about that. And so
unless, of course, Bitcoin becomes worthless.
But the value becomes more valuable as more people are doing it. That's the other difference of it, is that it does have that appeal. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah,
it's
but
probably
again,
a crazy ass bubble that will be studied for a long time, but it's popping right now.
appeal because others want it is again the same as Beanie Babies or baseball cards or anything else where that value is literally worse than fiat currency because it's literally based on people's interest. You know what I mean? Like they have value because people are interested, and if interest stays, great. But as Zach says, if suddenly they say they're gonna abolish it or something, the value is just gonna fall off the table just with the threat of abolishing it.
Wow.
Yeah, crypto mining in China alone uses more power than a small country. Yeah, who knows, man? It's wild. I don't know. I don't really know a touch about it. There's no tangible value. Is exactly right, Nate. It could just explode tomorrow and they'd all be worthless, in my opinion. But
well, except that it's on exchanges now. That's, I think, the legitimization of Coinbase coming online into the NASDAQ yesterday is a monster legitimization of this, to be able to say, all right, dude, it's not a theory of whether or not I can go buy some Bitcoin this afternoon and sell it tonight. I can do it now. And that makes it a real thing in many ways.
Again, though, I mean, things can be brought on and off the exchanges, right? Like just because you can buy it on an exchange doesn't mean it's not outlawed tomorrow and closed.
That is true. There's no doubt about that. And if they outlaw it, then that's a complete game changer.
Somebody out there will make millions of dollars on it, and somebody else will lose their shirt. That's what I know for sure. And I'm not going to be one of the people who loses their shirt. I'd rather just let my money gain small interest in a money market account and my retirement investments. And just kind of plug along the old-fashioned way. When it comes to my money, I'm not.
They're talking about that too. Like the economy supposedly has so much money waiting into the economy as we head into post vaccination. If there is some sort of a real comeback, that there's a lot of money laying around, and so the stock market should be a great place to have that money too. As well.
Right.
Something I'm like just thinking about is if I'm just running the economy, right? If I'm in administration, do I want my citizens to be putting money into Dogecoin or into cryptocurrency? Because that doesn't seem like the best output for the economy. It's not.
It's hedging your bet against that government's economy is what it is in many ways.
Oh, there's so many investments that don't make sense, though. I mean, I agree with you, Zach, but like, there's all kinds of. I mean, the thing the government wants us to buy most is bonds, right? Because you give the government $35 today, and in 20 years they give you $50, and so it's a very low interest loan to the government. So they want us to invest in bonds, and bonds sort of are like your worst case scenario for that's sort of in my mind the minimum growth an economy will have is the bond growth. Because I mean, if a bank's not going to give you the interest a bond will, or CD rollover or whatever, then you'd go buy bonds. So in other words, that's sort of the floor of your growth possibility. But other than that, I mean, there's all kinds of people invest in futures and all kinds of things that don't really necessarily actively stimulate the economy. And people exchange currency for a living. There's people that just look at the differences in the currencies and they transfer $100 from dollars to yen, and then the dollar drops and they transfer it back and it's $110, and then they transfer it back. I mean, they just move money back and forth, which is probably, if anything, destabilizing the world economies, because you keep investing in the one that's losing its value. Of course, maybe that stabilizes it. I don't know what the government wants us to do, except for they definitely subsidize construction and things like that, because that's one of the key indicators of growth economy. So they subsidize things like low interest loans to help encourage home construction.
Nate, I just read this. I'm sorry, but I just read this. Oops, that was Birdman. Just what I do. I actually put a comma between liquor and stocks, and I was like, I'm going to do what Nate does. I'm going to buy liquor, stocks, and then whatever the fuck. But these are liquor stocks, so my bad.
Interesting. He buys Diageo and Constellation, huh? That's interesting. I honestly never would have thought of that.
When times are good, people drink. When people are bad, there is no advice that is legitimate or even attempting to be legitimate on this show. So anything we talk about in this realm, for the sake of the legalities of this show, we are nothing but speculative noobs to consider it, even as we are.
Do not take my investment advice.
No, in other words, this is our attempt to get on Fox News.
Right. We are only as good as Fox News.
Exactly. Hashtag Dogecoin. Battery stocks, people.
We have 25
I'm getting
people.
caught up into the comments over there.
She said she hashtag Dogecoin in Robinhood and got 25 viewers.
So I want to talk about collusion because today some shit went down. Today,
big.
We find out today that we have the proof that Manafort gave and we knew that we had this. We just never like put it all together before today for whatever fucking reason. We finally get there today.
Right.
Bang. We have Manafort gave Kalimnik the friggin', here's the report on how to run a campaign for Trump against Clinton, all of this, hands it over to the Russian intelligence officers, which was the claim the whole time. There's no collusion. There's no collusion. The reality is that without that targeted marketing, without the specificity of what the KGB or the former KGB, whatever they're called, can do, there would have been no Trump presidency. There would have been no chance that he pulled it together because of what they were able to do in the micro-targeting of understanding what was going to happen in those counties in Wisconsin and in Michigan. They knew that they could win by just enough votes if they hit these Facebook ads. The Cambridge Analytica stuff will be coming in as well, and we will be learning a lot more about how much Facebook knows about us. We already should know about it. There's several media sources out there to learn the depths of that now, but it's going to be the next year of learning about this. Because Joe Biden also came out today and says we will not be dealing with these threats again in the same way as we go forward in elections. And we're going to recognize what Russia is doing. We're not going to play ignorant anymore. And there's a lot to say about this. But the first thing that must be said is that Trump was an illegitimate president because he couldn't do it without Russian interference. And we now have the proof. And we waited for Mueller to say it. We waited for Barr to say it. And we sat around and sweat with Rachel Maddow for 4 fucking years waiting for it to happen. And then we were all unjust when the impeachment didn't work because the Democrats. The reality is, and the Republicans, but mostly the Democrats. I'm done. I'll be quiet.
Well, I think one of the key factors is what good is an election system when one candidate can draw in another country to help them in the election? I mean, any information at all, even just encouraging them, even just a thumbs up. First, I mean, we knew he encouraged them to look for Hillary's emails, which they apparently did, and then started communicating back through Roger Stone. And then now to find out that campaign data was shared with Russian intelligence, what it shows is they were using a foreign government as basically an illegal super PAC. And I mean, if that's not fundamentally illegal in our election system, I'll be back to what I've said several times, which is anything illegal? You know, it seems like under Trump, everything we were told that was illegal just isn't illegal. And, you know, if any Trumper can sit here and say, well, sharing information with the Russians about an election isn't a problem. Well, I'd love to hear the rest of that conversation because, you know, if Joe Biden had gotten with France and they started a big social media pressure campaign to help Joe Biden, I think all these Trumpers would be absolutely falling apart.
Let's slow down a second and recall what we're talking about here, because what we're talking about are digital farms. Back to the digital farms, back to the giant trailers full of computers where you've got bots and you got people running the bots. Right. They would go back and they knew exactly where to go. And what's crazy about this is that in 2014, Ted Cruz, when they were talking about Ted Cruz's campaign heading out of his last senatorial campaign, heading into the presidential campaigns, they were discussing about Ted Cruz, the specificity of his machine, of the operation that he had. I remember everybody was in awe of what they called micro-targeting and how he could just destroy people with his micro-targeting. And then his campaign went to shit, but all of his people went over to Trump's. And then we have these meetings in 2015 and we're going to go back. We're going to all be spending time again doing reverse engineering back to that meeting where all the Trump people were together. The one that what was his name? Papadopoulos.
Papadopoulos.
The one he went to prison for because he kind of lied about, oh yeah, he wasn't there and he was there. Anyway, I'm like, this puts it all together. We now have the linchpin, and the whole Mueller report has to be looked at again, and we have to go back. And the reason that this is so important is because then this adds the first major chapter to a story of treason that never ended. We never really had the permission because of the Mueller report. It didn't seem to really call it treason completely. The libs might have called it treason, and the conservatives were able to play like it wasn't. They can't do, once again, they can't do that anymore.
Not logically.
Not logically because of the fact.
They will.
Like I said, I just checked that. It's just like, well, they will. They'll say, nope.
They will.
I'll stop there and let you guys fill in. I'm buzzing about this news. It's a huge deal.
It's a big deal. Zach, I've already given some of my sense.
Yeah, so this is kind of the first time hearing of the new allegations or the new evidence that's coming out. I keep my head kind of away from the Russia stuff, purely because for me it was always, I mean, of course this is an important topic, but for me it was always Russia, and I always felt like there was more to talk about. But this is really interesting. So from what I gather, correct me where I'm wrong, the Trump administration met with the Russian secret intelligence agencies, and they gave the Russian secret intelligence agencies.
Okay. Well, what has happened, Zach, is that I'm going to go ahead and just read this from the tweet. This is from the treasury.gov.
We knew Manafort had met with Kilimnik. We knew that.
Right. Yeah, we knew this, but for the first time ever, the United States government has claimed that the Russian agent Konstantin Kilimnik provided Russian intelligence agencies with the internal Trump campaign polling strategy data that he received from Manafort and Gates in 2016, and that even Mueller didn't get that done. Mueller never got the United States government saying, yeah, that happened. We now have it. The
US
that last
step, confirmed it. The proof that Kilimnik actually, because I believe the argument was even from Manafort, oh, well, I was just sharing it, it was just like pointless, just why not, and now we're finding out that it actually made it all the way to Russian intelligence. So there's a link now from the Trump campaign to Russian intelligence, which is really the key part.
Nate asks, sorry, Zach, I'm going to put this up there for a second. Nate asks the critical question. Can we impeach Trump again? The answer is no. The answer is we don't have to. But this is the fun part. From now on, we had to go through this last campaign season as if Trump was a legitimate candidate because he was a sitting president, because somehow that fucking happened. Now we know that should have never happened, and he was never a legitimate president without Russian interference.
Right.
And this isn't my words. This is the United States government's words now. That's the difference. When Barr came out and wishy-washied this thing away, all those right-wingers were able to go, see, it wasn't collusion. He kind of said it wasn't. And Mueller was like, yeah, well, it was good. Well, and there was this fucked up delivery. And it allowed for Trump, in his muddying the waters way of living, to just claim victory. And then that was that. The collusion is over. I mean, he just took it, and he should have never gotten by with it. Now we pull back to the QAnon clowns, to the longtime MAGA supporters, to the Susan Collins and the others in the middle who've tried to sway him with their love.
No.
They all knew it. He's an illegitimate president. Thank God he didn't get anything done as the president except his racism and sexism and bigotry and homophobia.
2017 tax cuts, completely changed the judiciary.
I mean, he did get those done, but he could have done so much more had he been a competent person. Yes. Had he been Joe Biden or any other person in the world, really.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Well, it shifts how we deal with this thing, man.
I mean, I guess it raises several questions, like, can't Manafort now be charged with a different crime? Or, could Trump be charged with a crime now?
Well, I mean, he could be tried for treason. right? I mean, he's a normal American now. He's no longer the president. So, yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy to come back to this place to me. I'm sorry. It just keeps coming up. It's like, holy shit. This is like 3 years ago now, or 2 years ago.
But, you kind of brought this up earlier. Here's my question. Is this treason under the law, or is this treason in our minds? Right?
Right. Helping a foreign government help you get elected. So therefore, assisting a foreign government in tipping the scales in an election. Yeah, I mean, it's well beyond a violation of election law, right? I mean, you're talking about bringing an entire foreign government online to help you win an election. I mean, I guess if that's not treason, I don't know what is.
We've gone into absolute total war in politics, and this is what the Democrats are starting to figure out. And so, and Nate asks the question: if you can somehow prove Trump is illegitimate, it can possibly help the argument of packing the court. Like if we recognize that we're in a zero-sum game politically right now, and there is, while we might try to do some nice things in our current form in the infrastructure package, working with Republicans, there's a point, and this packing of the Supreme Court is the point we've all been talking about for a long time, is if we get power, we have to fucking use it. And you may not want to use it for 2 years because you really might look like a real bunch of bullies if you do it for too long, especially in the first term. But we have to show that we can use power. And I think that, the weird politics I've heard on this Supreme Court expansion to 4, or expanding it by 4, is that it's some sort of, and this makes me feel like I'm a pretty far leftist here. But I'm like, fuck that shit. This needs to happen now. And they're like, no, this is a 4 years plan. Let's put this out there so we can fight about this in 22 and 24. Feel like you got to move. As soon as I think Ace had it a long time ago. I think he had it right when he said, we're going to play pat a cake with the COVID relief, and we're going to play pat a cake again with the with this package, and then it's a change of game at that point. And what's funny is we're starting to see the infrastructure package get support on both sides. But if you've noticed where the news is pushing, the Democrats are pushing to tax the coastal elites and the corporations for the money. And Mitt Romney included, and the other Republicans, are wanting to tax the gasoline of people in the Midwest who drive. So, and of course, a lot of those folks are able to have one political thing in their mind completely, and that is, fucking gas is high after Biden's come in, huh? And that's probably how they'll vote.
Right.
I know them because that's what they said to me. I don't know. I don't think we're going to lose. I just feel like that's the game that they're trying to play. And it's like, fuck it. Let's tax the shit out of the coastal elites. They're all lefties anyway. They want to pay it.
What's interesting is I've seen reporting that some of the established moderate Democrats have been pushing against that they don't want those taxes, the literal like coastal elites, right? I think some of the people that represent Delaware, they've been pushing back on that pretty hard. Some representatives from California have been pushing back on that hard.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, as much as like it'd be really easy to paint it as Republicans are evil, Democrats are good. In this, there are Democrats that are trying to support or trying to defend the wealthy in this instant. And I think that's an important aspect to think about. This might not be language that moderates want to hear, moderates want to use, but I want
to hear about this. Talk more. This is great.
As someone on the left, right, a lot of times we call moderates, specifically the ones in Congress, corporatists, because they're generally protecting corporations, they're generally protecting corporations and their profits. This isn't to say that your moderate voter's doing that. I don't think the average moderate is out there to protect insert corporation name. But when you look at the people in Congress,
I think you're wrong. I think they are.
Oh, well, lefty take, Marty. But
no, I'm saying I agree. It's a whole different conversation, but I think that there are moderates who eventually just go, yeah, fuck it. It's got to be one bureaucracy or another. And if it's Verizon that gets me my cell service, then, you know, I'll support that corporation, even though I might disagree with their politics in other places. We acquiesce because of comfort.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, there's a pretty significant split within the Democratic Party, as we all know. And from the left view, it's the corporate side versus the anti-corporate side, if you will.
Hmm.
That's the battle lines that I see.
Where are you at? As a learned young man, where are you at on that? I mean, you're trying to get shit done, right? Politics is about winning and getting things changed and doing that. So what's the right place? I mean, you're further left than I am, but where are you at in that line?
You know, part of it right now is through elections, through primaries, through either replacing people or scaring people to where they think they're going to be replaced. So those are two aspects where a lot of lefties are coming from. Really, it's in the Senate that I think there should be focus, because if you actually think about it, the House has been passing a lot of generally lefty progressive stuff. I mean, even the American Rescue Plan, the House version had the $15 minimum wage, right? So, you know, you're looking at the PRO Act. That's very workers' rights, pro-union. HR 1, you're looking at a whole variety of different things that are coming out of the House that are actually very progressive. So I think from my standpoint, in the more like 2 to 4 year term, I want to actually challenge some of the senators and get rid of some of the moderate ones that are there. But in the short term, I honestly wish that Joe Biden would just take a tougher stand against some of them. If Joe Biden is as popular as the data, the polling, as some of us think he is, he should go out in the public square and challenge some of these moderates and say, it's me or you. I'm the popular one. People like me more. Here's my idea. You can be with me or you can be against me. I'm the damn president. I'm the leader of the party. So
I like that. I'm processing what he does. You know, that right now his battlegrounds, he has not really decided to fight very many inter-party battles.
Right.
Sort of like there's this big blue wave and he's just kind of letting it go, which is weird for a Democrat, because Democrats usually like to lay these lines out. And so it's been weird to not have that intramural battle begin yet. It's a good thing. Maybe it's a lot of agreements of people going, we can't start that until this day.
I think part of the problem with that is Joe Manchin has way too much influence. Like he's the most, Chuck Schumer is not the most powerful Democrat. Joe Manchin is. And that's a problem.
So do you think that, okay, so let me ask you both you guys a question. Do you think that by naming that we're moving towards the 4 new seats in the Senate, and do you think that by naming the DC piece, which is the DC inclusion and statehood,
you mean 4 new seats in the Supreme Court?
I'm sorry, the Supreme Court and the DC, both of those two things, the statehood and that, have both been named in the last month.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is essentially an education campaign now to just move and bring people along into that? Or do you think that they're planting a flag for 10 years from now that they're not going to put that much energy behind?
Jeff, you can answer this one. I got to think about it.
My daughter just walked in. Give me a second.
Yeah. All right. I guess I have to go. Man, that's a tough question. You know, it's also kind of hard for me because I take the non-lefty view on Supreme Court packing. I'm against it just because I kind of agree when Republicans say, if you pack the court, then we're going to pack it right after you. But on the other note, one of the things FDR did, which maybe that's what Biden's doing, is FDR said, I'm going to pack the court. And he scared the shit out of the court. And so the court went, okay, we'll agree with you, because they wanted to keep their influence. So if that's what the Joe Biden strategy is, then good, right? Scare the hell out of the court.
I think he's actually hoping to get it, because I really think that total war is how we have to understand American politics right now. That's
what that is. I mean, adding those seats to the Supreme Court is definitely saying, basically, F diplomacy. You know, we all understand why they totally screwed Obama over, and then totally screwed Biden over by, blocking Merrick Garland and then putting in what's her name, but Barrett basically putting 3 in when they should have put in 2. I definitely agree. If we do add 4, I mean, then the Republicans are just going to turn around and come back and add 5 or something, right? Or whatever, 6. And I guess you want to keep an odd number. Isn't there some country that has like 33 Supreme Court judges or something? So, yeah, I guess the question just sort of becomes, what's the common sense? Where do we want to go? Because yes, if we're going to add 4, we should assume if the Republicans get a plurality, they'll add 6. And pretty soon it's just a race to what number. At some point we have to be somewhat pragmatic. Now, again, we definitely got screwed. The Republicans definitely lied and screwed us out of 2 seats. But that said, yeah, obviously if we add 4, the Republicans will add 6 the next chance they get. So
the truth is, too, I think
the statehood's a lot cleaner issue because you're giving, say, Puerto Rico statehood, which seems reasonable, in D.C. and I don't know, Guam. I don't know what other possible states there are. But
I think right now it probably is only going to be D.C. from what I've
heard. So, but even if someone came along and said, okay, well, we need to go do Puerto Rico, Guam, blah, 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 I could be wrong, but almost any probationary state is going to be relatively blue. That would be good for us. Statehood is, to me, a safer bet if you're not just playing games. You're adding a state. You're adding a place that should be a state. It needs more representation. There shouldn't be citizens living only in a district. And, there's lots of good arguments versus adding seats to the Supreme Court. I fear is a little dangerous. I don't know if it's a threat or not. It was actually very interesting. I noticed the left-leaning news stations were playing the Chauvin trial while the right-leaning station was playing the senators describing adding seats to the Supreme Court with literally the heading "Democrats announce move to pack court." So it's just sort of interesting that one channel was watching Chauvin and the other was watching.
Just by that barometer itself, it sounds like it's something I'm probably going to support.
Right. And I'm not saying it's a mistake. I think you are.
Here's the deal, man.
Here's
the deal. It's total in terms of, like you say, there's no diplomacy. Total war is when it's just like, we're done.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This is just 3 months ago. We hadn't had 4 months ago now. We hadn't had an attack on our government 5 months ago. Geez, this year is moving on. We hadn't had an attack on our government. We hadn't had this situation where we have an entire party that hasn't denounced trying to take over our government.
Right.
So Democrats have to do it now or never. There won't be a United States that isn't a fascist nation if those people get back in power. We're literally in that place. And I think that that's what a lot of Democrats and liberals understand, is that if we don't exercise our power now, if they get back in power, look what they're doing to Georgia. Look what they're doing to voting rights all over this country. They are not going to allow for this multicultural, multifaceted face of this country to happen. It's still going to happen. Just people won't have power. Kim Reynolds today, there's as a state in Iowa, she made an announcement that she's like, none of these kids that are coming in from this federal program that are bringing these kids to various states from the border, none of them get to come to Iowa. And she just made some big statement about it, and everybody cheered. We have states where that racism is their core identity. And it's always been the federal government that has had to go in and say, nope. It sucks. It's what they got to do again.
I guess my biggest fear with all of this is I agree in the sense of going all out and going total war, but I don't believe that Joe Biden is the person to go all out and go total war. Even though he's done some relatively progressive things so far. I mean, we covered last week the infrastructure bill, right?
Right.
That's not total war. That's not going all in. And I think I miss Ace.
That's a very good point.
I miss Ace. I wish he could be up here, but to bring up something that Ace says a lot, I think Ace would argue that the infrastructure bill is specifically meant to try to get Republicans involved, show that it can't be done, and then use it for the filibuster. But if that were true, why the hell did Chuck Schumer go ahead and start doing this through budget reconciliation, right? Why is that the way we're going to do it? So it's not about the filibuster. Very specifically, it's not about the filibuster.
Then you have half a loaf.
Right. So I just think that there are some problems with the Biden administration that show he's not, and what he's Joe Biden, right? Like at the end of the day, remember who we elected. The Democratic Party at the end of the day chose to elect someone who was not all in on the left side or all total war. They chose to elect someone whose image was about I can work with both sides. So I think that's important to remember that.
I think
that's
when
very
it comes
important. Thank you. I'm not sure where I'm coming down on this, but it feels like we're in total war, though, right? Like it feels like he's playing cards that way.
The concern I have about the all-out war is, the old phrase, watch the fire you set in your enemy, for it may burn you more than him. If we're willing to just consider it all-out war and add 4 seats to the Supreme Court and force kill the filibuster and add Washington, D.C., and force through an infrastructure bill, not to say that any of those things are bad, but, when and if the shoe's on the other foot, they're going to turn around and say, well, they packed the court. They forced through an infrastructure bill that wasn't popular. They killed the filibuster. So now we have to double pack the court, cut all corporate taxes. So it's just –
okay. So, but I want to say,
I'm not saying that's not where we are.
I want to say Tom DeLay and gerrymandering. I want to say Lindsey Graham and gerrymandering. I want to say, we lived through that, Jeff.
No, I know.
Finally have time to score some points, man.
I know.
Killing Citizens United or overturning it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Sounds like Mitch McConnell might be on board with that these days. Kidding.
Yeah.
But no, of course not.
The reason why I think, if we're going to go all out and do all of these things, why it could be a good idea, but you'd have to fully commit to it, is the Republican Party won't win. Though, as they stand, if you get rid of all the cheating mechanisms, the Republican Party can't win, like as of right now. And I personally believe if you start going with a more lefty populist platform, which in some aspects Biden has done, and some he hasn't, you're going to get more people to like you regardless. So the Republican Party of racism, xenophobia, fascism is not a party that can get the majority of the population.
That's right.
So I think if you go all out, they're not going to be able to win. And as we've seen in history, once a party becomes dominant, like really dominant, the other party ends up having to reinvigorate itself. Remember, the Democratic Party used to be a very different party than it was today. The Republican Party has gone through some shifts. So there's changes. Sometimes parties collapse. We didn't always have the Democrats. We didn't always have the Republicans. It's possible that the Republican Party of today completely crashes, and maybe the Libertarian Party maybe softens its views a little bit to get more Republicans involved.
It surprised me how popular the polarization of the Republican Party was. I figured every time they kept grabbing for a higher ring of craziness, I thought, man, they're just shedding Republicans left and right. Like, how can they keep the party together? But man, it's like the further they went, the more excited all the Republicans were. Like numbers wise, they really didn't lose anybody. We won the election by having a lot more numbers. Mm-hmm. So maybe moderation is dumb. I guess it just comes back to like the way I live my life, right? You tend to want to compromise, meet people in the middle, figure out ways to win-win, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe we're just past that. And if you have the majority, you go for it. And then I guess the question becomes, if we've got the reins and we can do what we want, we need to find ways that we don't inadvertently energize the Republican Party by taking that one step into say something that's actually unpopular, because like we talk about it, pro-choice, safe and legal abortion is popular, well beyond Democrats. Reasonable gun control is popular, well beyond Democrats. So you're not really at risk of like alienating some Democrats by adding some reasonable gun control. You might alienate some, but you may grab some moderate Republicans. But when you start going, as long as we don't go for that, as long as we don't pull our own slippery slope and pass something that's, just really makes a lot of people stop and go, what are we doing? Maybe being more aggressive is fine. It's counterintuitive for me. It's not the way I handle anything else in my life.
Well, okay. Oh, go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
And, I think it's an important distinction to make. We're not at total war with Republican voters per se. We're at total war with the Republican legislators.
Right.
Legislators. right? So I think that's the way you look at it. And a good example of this, I think we might talk more about this in another episode, but pulling out of the Afghanistan war, that's a damn popular thing.
Very
like it, I mean, you hear one of the biggest things that the Trumpers talk about. They wanted to get out of the Afghan war.
Yep.
Biden did it. Trump talked about it. Or I shouldn't say Biden did it because, there's still time. He might end up disappointing. But this is the most, like, he might actually do it. This really looks like he's going to do it with all the things we know.
We'd still have Iraq.
I think by next year we're out of Afghanistan.
We'd still have Iraq and Syria, wouldn't we?
Trump pulled us out of Syria. We're out of Syria. We left our shit on the ground in Syria.
Well, I know we retreated from that one base, but that we pulled completely from Syria. We don't have any troops in Syria.
I think we're gone.
Yeah, we pulled out.
We have troops in Iraq.
And even if we're right, and that's a problem, and I want Biden to pull them out as well. But just the pure, I ended the 20 years war, right? I ended the longest war in our country's history. You can't. What are you going to say? You can't. How do you you either? This is somewhat of a little shot at America Heals, but are you going to side with Liz Cheney, right?
20-year wars with Iraq, right?
With Afghanistan.
Yeah. Iraq's shorter.
Shorter?
Yeah.
I thought we did Desert Storm before Iraqi freedom. I mean, before whatever we did to go in Afghanistan. I thought we've been in Iraq longer than Afghanistan.
No, Afghanistan was 01. Afghanistan was 01. Iraq was 03.
Yeah, we went right in there to fuck with them right away. And then we had to build coalitions and lies and shit for that.
I guess I just remember it wrong then.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, Jeff, to your comment about your life and the way you live your life is I think that may be where we are in politics as well, is that there is this weird peaceful micro politic. You can go to a softball game. You can go to elementary school. You can get your pictures taken tomorrow. You're not going to have conflicts with people that you're going to be standing in a close vicinity with that you politically would probably come to fisticuffs with, within seconds. That's not going to happen because you're living your life.
Well,
but in the political sphere, in Washington, in our state houses, I cannot go into a situation with a Jim Jordan or pick one of them and expect that they're going to come at me with good faith ever.
Well, I mean,
ever. Mitch McConnell, sorry, bro, ain't
sure.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at politically. It's total war with them. It's never trust them. If they want to join your side for a second, that's great. But there is no unity.
And I don't want to devil's advocate too much, but I mean, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Mitch McConnell, these are some of the most extreme Republicans in Congress, right? These guys, that's their job is to be the hitmen because they're in districts that they feel are very secure. It's their job to just be like, no, Democrats suck because they know their seats are pretty well established. They don't put the person who barely won their seat in the firing line of going in and yelling at Fauci, right? Like
that was the rules 15 years ago.
Oh.
We're past the sedition attempt where these guys voted to throw out our constitutional, election. Like we're past that, dude.
I think a problem I have with and this is once again from my stance on the, I guess, far left, right? How is Mitt Romney not an extremist in certain ways, right? Like that's how I view it. The Overton window has just moved so far right that Romney is the voice of reason in the Republican Party. That is insane.
Right. I think Romney gets a lot of good press because he's been the most reasonable Republican. But to your point, the most reasonable Republican is still way out in right field.
Right.
They're so far. Like they had Steve Scalise on the other day. They're talking to him. And I'm like, this guy is a nut.
A total nut.
He's their main character. Come on in, Steve. How you doing? It's just like, this guy is a loon.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's weird.
No, he's a loon.
You can't
I actually feel bad. I changed my profile picture to the Republican elephant when Scalise was shot to show solidarity, and I wish I hadn't. He's kind of an asshole. I mean, I'm glad he didn't die, but I didn't need to show as much sympathy as I did. He's pretty terrible. No one should be shot at. I'm not making a joke about that.
That 100% agree. But these people were not even merciful to Congress.
No,
they weren't even merciful to Mike Pence. They weren't even merciful to the police in many ways.
No, they're terrible.
Yeah. That blows my mind. That just
somehow they've created their own reality, though. I mean, it's as crazy as we all see them. Their side of the fence still thinks they're right. I mean, we have Republicans that are are pro-COVID and anti-vax, and they're sleeping well at night. I mean, it's just terrifying how far they've warped reality to meet their needs. It's just mind-boggling. You know, they talk about, for example, they all talk about we're constitutionalists, right? Well, the Constitution starts with we the people, right? So obviously the people are in charge, right? But you're going to be able to replace election boards with an election auditor. I mean, that's we the people. You're going to put a single person in charge of election results, maybe for certain counties in Georgia. I mean, that's not we the people. That's he the governor. You know, that's so it's gotten to the point of really just silliness. And I've, well, it's a diversion, but I've always said, you know, Barack Obama was a constitutional expert. You know, no one liberals aren't anti-constitution. We're pro-constitution too. It's just a matter of how you see it being used point by point, not just stand alone. You know, the federal government shouldn't tax people. Okay, well, that's one belief, but like, you know, we got to pay for our military. So we got to do something.
I think there's also like a recognition on the left that the Constitution was written by a bunch of 20-something drunk rich frat boys. Like, if you actually want to look at it, that's who the Constitution was written by, mostly men in their 20s, very rich men. Yeah. So if you look at all this, right, why should we be treating a document from 200 years ago that said black people weren't even equal, right? That said that didn't say women were equal as the Holy Grail. And specifically in the document, it has a provision that says this thing needs to be changed. So we're going to give a provision to change it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great Jim Jeffries joke. He says, people yell about the Second Amendment. My Second Amendment rights, you can't change the Second Amendment. He's like, that's why it's called an amendment. which you need is a thesaurus. Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Second Amendment was one of the first changes. Like, literally, the Bill of Rights was added to clarify certain things, and it can obviously be reclarified and overruled and changed. And I mean, we outlawed liquor using the Constitution, right? So, it's always in flux.
And then we outlawed our outlaw of liquor.
Right? So. Yeah, we outlawed the outlaw of liquor. Correct.
So
we outlawed slavery and then put in unless you're in prison.
Right.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that is wrong with the Republican Party, and at the end of the day, they're not winning elections because they're winning them fair and square, in any aspect. The last time on the national level that a Republican president won the popular vote was 2004.
Yep.
I mean, over this whole
that was because he was a year into his war. I mean, he still had it.
Yep.
Right. So
not even a year, really. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at actually, I think that's one of the bigger things. We can talk about Russian troll farming all day. It doesn't matter if there wasn't an electoral college or if there was a different system in place, right?
Right.
Because I mean, I have this graph, not like.
Well, I disagree. It would have mattered. They played the game and won the game that was there to be played. I do want to pull back, and I want to just give a moment of color to this. I was at that time. I was in my car a lot. I was traveling around a lot, and over the course of that summer of 15, I was listening to Hannity a lot. And somewhere around June or July, it was around the 4th of July, Hannity began a shtick. And it was a shtick that kind of grew legs pretty quickly, but it was a shtick that said, you know what? If Russia is out there and they've got Hillary's tapes or Hillary's emails, I'll pay for them. And he did it for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, one day, Donald Trump picked it up. And I remember it because I was like, oh my God, I heard Hannity do this about 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And all of a sudden, one day, Donald Trump picked it up and he never dropped it. Now we know Hannity and Trump talk late at night. Maybe Hannity was his dude that, drops the fishing expedition to see how it works, see how it polls, see how much, it brings in, whatever. But it was exactly played out like that. Once Trump in his unsophisticated brain, locked in on that, he when it's a duck, they call it molting. They like fall in love with your face after like the first 3 days of their life. That's what Trump does to ideas. And so he like molted onto the idea of if they've got the emails, it begins.
Yeah.
And then we see the meetings happen because Trump then begins to push. It was once where he sort of picked up the idea, started fishing it, playing with it, watching the crowds lose their minds on it. Then they organized it. Russia probably was involved with Hannity.
One of the press secretaries, I think it was, said that there were like daily briefs from Fox News. They were basically directing a lot of what Trump was saying, a lot of the how to spin answers, how to spin topics, how to drive forward his agenda. I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Omarosa, or I know she wasn't a press secretary. They're all in on that, man. They're PR, but it was Spicer or somebody had just said, like in an interview, there was daily emails from Fox News with like strategy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Fox News at least at one point was very actively involved with the marketing of the Trump White House for sure. And so, yeah, they were echoing each other all the time, which, of course, I'm sure was very consoling to the people that were watching Fox News because it's like, oh, yeah, because everything was staying nice and lockstep,
Right.
I do, like, I understand the power that the collusion had, but still, I mean, we're talking Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by millions, and I don't think you can overcome that even with Russian troll farming. I mean, because at the end, these are liberals, right? It's not like these liberals' minds are going to be changed because of whatever troll farming they're going to see. So,
no. I'm sorry. I gotta push back on that. Watch the Cambridge Analytica stuff. They were shaving off when she was winning. I mean, she lost so many counties or precincts in Wisconsin by 9 votes or 11 votes. And they know that these Cambridge Analytica ads were peeling X amount of people away from voting. People didn't go vote for Hillary. The anti-Hillary vote was such a unique vote. It was so well played, easy to play, so unlike any other vote. And so they didn't need more to go vote for Trump. They just needed less to vote for Hillary.
Yeah. There was a stay home aspect to the push.
And they knew they were like within 5 freaking votes of a precinct. It's crazy, man.
They were radicalizing. What was that social media show you told me to watch? And I did watch it. I forgot what the title was again.
So, the Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma. So, yeah. Social Dilemma talks about how it would route people that were into conspiracies further down the rabbit hole. It tends to push them towards QAnon. So that was one thing that was happening at the same time was the sort of more outrageous people were being drawn towards QAnon. And then, the second thing that was happening was just sort of the concept of, there's nothing you can do about it. Hillary's going to win. And even some Democrats were like, okay, well, Hillary's going to win. I'll do something else on Super Tuesday, and that cost her a lot of votes. I mean, there was a lot of just sort of demotivating going on. It wasn't necessarily she's
in the right place, in just the right place. They knew that this factory had gone down in La Crosse, and they were like, "Oh man, those 17 people, they've got family, and you know how many family that family has? They've got 36 cousins. That's the shit they're talking about."
Yeah,
right. But the 2 million number, I mean, I was trying to find I have a spreadsheet of all of this. I was trying to find it, but I can't. But I just don't see how if we had a popular vote system, I just don't see how they could flip over that additional 2+ million people.
Oh, I agree. It would be a whole. I don't know how they would do it.
I believe if you go back, there's 2 separate issues, right? Issue number 1 is the Electoral College, which is sort of the macro version of gerrymandering, right? When you get into gerrymandering, that's when you get these representatives and senators. Well, I guess not senators, right? Because senators are voted by the state. But you get these representatives where you have a state that's got 5 Republican reps and 1 Democrat, but the state is 45% Democratic because of these crappy districts. Right. So that to me is an even bigger problem than the Electoral College. The Electoral College, for the most part, is state level, and so it's sort of, it's obviously handicapping small states, giving them tons of more power than the big states. I've done all the math before, and that's truly what happens. Like California, basically, they're going to be 11% of the vote, whether Electoral College or popular. But what happens is you get to Wyoming, and these very small numbers of voters have this huge weight in the Electoral College. So there's 2 problems kind of working together, and the fact that, again, Wyoming still has its 2 senators, and I would assume 3 reps. I don't know. 2 reps. They have 2 reps, 2 senators. It's 2 the minimum. You have to have 2 reps.
Actually, they may only have 1.
They only have 1 rep.
That.
But either way,
they've
got 3. It probably is 3 because that's their electoral power, right? They have 3, and California has 33 or whatever. But the ratio of populations is so disparate. So
55.
Basically, the House of Representatives is actually like an extreme version of the Electoral College, because every state gets the 2 senators, but then you also get these reps that are from these very small states. Anyway, I guess how people are represented is maybe even a bigger question. I mean, obviously, I guess there would be an argument that would say if Wyoming has to have 1 rep, and that 1 rep represents 100,000 people, then maybe California should have 2,000 reps because they have so many people. It starts to get pretty confusing if you really stop and think about it. Like if a 1 share is Wyoming, then why doesn't California have a 2,000 share?
Yeah, capping it at 538, right?
Right, or conversely, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota share a rep, I mean, I don't know. Something's got to, we obviously have a system. I don't think the founding fathers expected to be such a big disparity in our population.
What's actually really interesting.
We were a lot more evenly spread in the 13 colonies, I bet. I bet they didn't expect Maryland's just suddenly going to have all the people and Delaware is going to be nobody. I don't think they predicted that.
They had the big state, small state. I mean, that's what the Senate and the representative. That's like what that whole compromise was about, right?
Except I'm guessing they wouldn't have expected such a big statistical gap. I mean, there's a big.
Sure. But, they actually didn't expect the Electoral College to be used today. This is my favorite fact about the Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention had a committee of postponed matters. And guess what was on that committee? The Electoral College.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was one of the postponed things, one of the last things that they did. They threw it together. Everyone liked it enough to where there wasn't much debate on it. But there was also this expectation that we'll do this for 40 years and someone's going to fix it. That of course never happened. So, there's also a lot of things that came with expectations. The Bill of Rights was actually a prerequisite to have the Constitution. There was an expectation that, hey, if we sign on to the Constitution, almost immediately after, we're going to begin the motion to enact the Bill of Rights, right? So there were a few things that kind of came with the Constitution where there was expectations for change. The Electoral College was one of them.
Well, Jefferson referred to that too, and I mean, he assumed that it was going to be a continually evolving thing. And what's interesting is when you go into the Monroe, when you get to James Monroe as the last of the founding fathers who signed the documents, it's very interesting how Andrew Jackson, as a young American military leader, gets very popular early on, and the next wave of politics is personality driven from the get-go. And one of the things that Andrew Jackson did, he did a lot of things. One of them that he did was he was the first one to really immortalize the founding fathers. That was his first major move, was to realize that we're of a new generation, and Manifest Destiny comes in at that time, and it begins to just be the new language of the time. When Jefferson sends the Corps of Discovery out in 1803 to go to find the Northwest Passage, it's not in the spirit of domination. It was in the spirit of discovery. And just 30 years later, it's full tilt domination. It's this country is ours by divine, mandate, and you can do whatever you want. In fact, kill as many buffalo as you can on the way.
Right. I'm surprised the Buffalo Bills haven't been canceled yet.
Isn't that something?
Right.
So yeah, the smallest state, you guys of course are totally right. The smallest state that electoral college you can have is 3, because you have your 2 mandatory senators and your 1 mandatory rep. And then of course
that was a new law, I think in 2000. I think they used to have 2, but then they changed that.
It goes up, but Wyoming is overrepresented by a factor of 3. They have 0.56% of the electoral college and 19% of the votes. Ironically, California is actually in about the middle of the chart. California has 10.22% of the electoral college and 10.38% of the votes. So they basically, no matter what you do, if you do popular vote or electoral college, California will have 10% of the votes. Now, what's important, of course, is a big hunk of those would be Republican votes, which currently are currently erased. Then as you go up, the underrepresented states, Florida is the most underrepresented state with a ratio of 0.78. They had, this is in 2016, they had 6.89% of the vote with only 5.39% of the electoral college. And the reason they're so far out of whack is because, believe it or not, they have a population of basically 22 million, about 8 grand short of 22 million. And they had 9.4 million voters in 2016. So they vote at a very large rate.
Wow.
Nearly half of all Floridians vote, which is extremely high when you take out underage people and criminals. So it's actually kind of interesting. People talk so much about, well, if we got rid of the electoral college, California would pick presidents. Actually, no. Actually, California would be basically the same. In fact, I've said it several times to our more conservative friends, you guys would actually like California to be popular vote, because right now it goes 100% Democrat, and it alienates any Republican voters, and vice versa. In Kansas, same thing. It goes 100% Trump, and it alienates any of the Democrat voters. So, for example, California had 4.4, almost 4.5 million votes for Trump in 2016, but the 8.7 million votes for Hillary washed them out. So, almost a third of the votes went for Trump, but they're gone. And I don't think people really realize that if you start to really look at it, and what's so confusing about the Electoral College is how much of the votes are actually worthless. Because what happens is you have overvotes where you overkill. You've got so you affirmed a vote. For example, California, they had 8.7 for Hillary and 4.4 for Trump. Well, like 8.3 million votes were wasted. 4.3 million votes were wasted as overkill votes for Hillary. You only needed one more than the Trumpers to get the state. So all those extra Democrat votes just get thrown away because the Electoral College all went the way. Now, you want them, of course. You want to win as big as you can. But the point is, when you really get down to it, the actual votes that pick the president, it gets to be a very small number. In fact, I believe it's 55 million votes actually decided the presidency in 2016 versus, when you combine the Trump and Hillary votes, it was a total of 130 million votes. But the truth is only 54 million picked it because all the overkill votes, all the votes for the loser, it's a system that just destroys a bunch of votes. And so obviously the popular vote would have gone to Hillary, would have gone. Well,
and the approach of an election, the approach of campaigns would shift completely.
Oh, totally. Because again, it'd be worthwhile to come to Kansas. It'd be worthwhile to come to Kansas as a relatively populous state, a middle of the road populous state, to try and increase your Democratic votes. Whereas right now it's not, because the Republicans are going to get the state. What's the point of getting 100,000 more Democrat votes? But if it was a popular vote, and conversely, it would make sense as a Republican to go campaign in California, because you can get, Trump got 4.4 in 2016. Maybe he could get 6 million if they knew every vote would count. So it's a very interesting situation when you start talking about the Electoral College. But the truth is, it way overvalues very small states. California, for example, that everyone talks about like it would be this big deal, is actually kind of in the middle of the road. It actually really underreports. The worst reported states are Florida. Next worst is North Carolina, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, Massachusetts, Michigan, Wisconsin, the battleground states. Because guess what? Those are battleground states. There's a bunch of campaign visits. People are energized. They feel like they can make a change, make a difference. And so they have high voter counts because every vote seems to count there. Everywhere else, our voter percentage drops off.
Yep.
But anyway, sorry to diverge into that. I just happen to have all this information from 2016. I actually updated some of it in 2020, but I didn't go quite as heavy through it because we wanted, hey.
I was able to find the spreadsheet I was looking for, Marty, if you want to pull this up.
You don't want to see my spreadsheet.
Here we go. Let's see this.
Just a sheer field of numbers.
Right. So I threw this together a little while ago. I think it's somewhat self-explanatory, but if you look at over here on this popular vote by electoral college states, I went through painstakingly to figure out how much of the votes needed to shift for someone to win via the electoral college. So if you were to look at the popular vote, right, Joe Biden won by over 7 million votes. So you would need about half of that, right, to flip over, and then you would be able to beat Joe Biden. Here's how much he won by the actual popular vote by electoral college states. 42,000, almost 43,000, or if we're trying to call a clean win where where Trump gets more than 270, then it's 76,000. So, I mean, look at that disparity. 7 million versus 43 or 76,000.
And that 43,000,
that
43,000 is why those people got paid what they got paid, because that's the number they knew that's the nut. This 7 million they were so glad for, but it doesn't matter at all.
No. And just think about it.
Craziness, man.
And just think about it. Literally, those 43,000 in that one state, Donald Trump could have won, losing the popular vote by 7 million.
That's a collection of the states, right?
This is so. This 43,000 is a collection of Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan, I believe, which also happens to be the 3 states that Trump was fighting the hardest in. So just so you know, that's why he was fighting so hard there. And let's look at 2016, right? You have 2 million or almost 3 million votes in favor of Hillary Clinton, but Trump ends up eking this out by about 77,000. So that's a pretty, I mean, that's massive, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as massive as the difference between.
And those are problems based on what you're just telling us right now. Look at below the what is it, 527 and then 990. Those numbers, Barack didn't have those problems.
Well, he didn't, right? I mean, you're looking at 527, but he won the popular vote by almost 5 million, right? Then you're looking, he has 9.5 million in his popular vote, and he wins by a little less than 1 million. So it's almost like
fair enough. I see what you're saying. Yeah, he did and he didn't. Yeah, it's just it's not as close. That is not a great trend.
Yeah, it's almost like you need 10 times the amount of votes in the popular vote than in the actual electoral college vote. I think I did Ronald Reagan 1984 just, to show. I mean, he won, if we're looking at electoral college states, he won this by almost 7.5 million. That's a lot. Until you look at it and see, he won the popular vote by 16.8 million. It's a pretty big that's a massive difference, right?
Really
so
is.
Well, he had a near landslide, didn't he?
That's why that's such a great one, because there was never another landslide like it. It was just the drubbing of a lifetime. He only won, Mondale won Minnesota, which was his home state. That was it. It was a complete ass kicking.
I think Nixon's reelection was another near complete landslide.
Yeah, George McGovern in 72 was a complete landslide, yes.
The 3 states in 2020 were Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona to get the 43,000, and then you add Nevada for 34,000 if you want the clean non-tie win. So yeah, it's extremely close, and that's why election night I was like one of the few people that wasn't depressed, is because I had looked at the 2016 results and said, well, the beginning of the night, we could rattle them off. I mean, D.C., Virginia, Maine, Massachusetts, Hawaii, California, Rhode Island. Well, they're all going to go blue, right? Beginning of the night, we were all freaking out because it was like, well, they're calling Alabama, Tennessee, Nebraska, Louisiana, Indiana. Yeah. Remember, they were calling these all early. Missouri, Kansas. Everyone's just like, oh, poop. We're in trouble.
As soon as Missouri went, it was like, oh, no, this is bad.
States had no chance of going blue. No one. I didn't think there was any chance any of those states would go blue. Now, there were some surprises. Like, I wasn't expecting Arizona or Georgia. But, we were all looking at Michigan, Wisconsin,
Oh man,
Ohio,
Atlanta had me so sold that we were going to win Texas. I cashed in. I don't know.
It wasn't bad. It was, 46 and a half to 52. I mean, it wasn't landslide.
I still think we did.
It wasn't horrible. But I think what's also important is, and it doesn't get talked about much, but like, for example, Georgia, right? The third party candidate got 62,000 votes in Georgia, and Trump lost it by under 13,000. So it doesn't get talked about a lot. And I guess it's because people figured that those people might have just not voted at all. Those people might have gone ahead and voted Trump if they hadn't had a third party. Those people might have voted Democrat. I mean, I don't know. But when the Libertarians vote 62,000 in a state Trump lost by 12-6, Wisconsin Libertarians, they voted 56-8 versus the 20,000 Trump lost by. So 3 times what Trump lost by was in the third party. Arizona, it was 61,000 for the third party. Trump lost Arizona by 11,000. Now, I'm sorry. You can slice and dice those numbers, but if those third party people had voted for the other 2 candidates, Trump would have won Arizona. I don't believe that you take the Libertarian vote and it doesn't go 60-40 Republican. I'm just sorry. I won't believe it. And Nevada's the only one. Nevada,
especially in places like Arizona.
Nevada was 32,000 third-party votes, and Biden won it by 34,000. So that one doesn't matter what the third party did. But I mean, I'm sorry. I'll bring it up again. I mean, I know people hate to hear this, but our system just does not work for third-party candidates, in my opinion, because this is what happens. This is what happened with what's his name. It's underplayed, but with the Hillary loss. There was Johnson and whoever else ran for the third party, and they did some of the same things to her. We don't talk about it a lot, but the third party candidate was not good for Hillary in 2016, if we all recall.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
It was a Johnson.
It's not that I don't want a third party system.
There was a Green Party candidate too. I can't remember her name, but
and she was mixed up with the Russians too. What was her name? She was a doctor. Anyway, I forgot her name.
Yeah. I spent time looking into that. There's some evidence showing that the third parties in 2016 didn't have as much of a role, just because it's wrong to assume that like an entire party is going to vote a certain way,
Right.
Actually, the reason why I'm saying this is it was like 60-40, that like 60% of the Green Party who voted in 2016, if there was no Green Party, they wouldn't vote at all. So it's like this notion that they would vote for, like, if you're going to vote for the Green Party, you are kind of knowing you're not going to win, right?
I mean, I have to say, again, when it's 62,000 in Arizona and Trump lost by 11, I'm sorry, 40% of them might have just not voted, but of the other 60%, you're not going to convince me that the other 60% wouldn't have gone 2/3 Trump and 1/3 Biden. I just don't think libertarians are Democrats at the moment. Now, it's not to say that they couldn't be. I mean, I think personally,
it's not that they would be Democrats. It's that they wouldn't vote. I think you could still be right, though. I think what we need to look at is the increase of the libertarian vote in Georgia in 2020 versus 2016. Right.
Yeah.
If we saw an increase, then we could probably say, okay, that might be Trump voters coming over. But at the same time, that gets muddled by the fact that Trump had a whole bunch of new voters coming his way in 2020 as well. So I think trying to
Jill Stein and Gary Johnson was the Green candidate. Jill Stein was the independent. And then there was an Evan McMullen.
Yes.
I don't even know what party he was. The Don't Give a Shit party, I guess. Let's just look. I've got it. Georgia. We're on my mind. Georgia had.
Do you want me to show this?
It had 1.8 million for. No, it's pretty ugly. It 1.8 million for this box here is Hillary votes. 1.8 million for Hillary. 2.08 million for Trump. 1.25 for Stein. 7,600 for Johnson and 1,317 for whoever we said. So that's actually a much bigger number. Let's just see. That was actually 145,000 third-party votes in 2016 in Georgia for Johnson, Stein, and McMillan. So yeah, they had 145,000 third-party votes in. So yeah, I mean that's actually very interesting. The third-party votes actually cut in half, and Trump still lost. So yeah, you may have a point. Now, of course, there we also have all the voter registration pushes and arguably a faulty governor election. I mean, there was a lot of motivators going on in Georgia, a lot of secondary factors that I think would be hard to bring out of the equation. But it's a good point. All right, what we got?
Well, we're gonna move into the last part of the show tonight, and I don't know how long we'll do this, but we're gonna watch the Jonathan Alter interview with Donald Trump.
The Axios, yeah, I thought that's what you're saying.
The Axios. What day? This was August 3rd of 2020. Where were we in August 3rd of 2020? Where were you at back in August of 2020? Back in those days, one of the things that was happening was we were about to have our major surge that was going to happen. The summer had given us a bit of a reprieve. We thought maybe we were on, I don't know where we thought we were, but for many of us, we were hearing that we were going to be about another year of this thing before we were vaccinated, and that was tough to hear. But when we watched this the first time, when we've seen the referrals back to this masterful interview, one of the things that we experienced the first time through when this happened was the absolute dread of tyranny. And when we watched this interview, which got some laughs and made us all feel a little good for a second, I think a lot of us might have couched our thoughts about this interview and our study of this interview, and just kind of put it away and moved on into the election and the next thing. Now that we know about the collusion, now we know about these other things that have gone on, the insurrection that followed this, we're going to take a look at this thing. And I just want us to be, first of all, glad and proud that we don't have this son of a bitch as our president anymore. Sorry, I apologize.
August 3rd, we were on the back of the second wave. We were running along at a lot of cases a day, 60,000 cases a day. So it wasn't like a flat spot. It wasn't a time of peace. I mean, we had come through, our low point was in, say, June, where we had like 21,000 cases a day. We had surged up around mid-July, and we were coming back down, but by no means were we done. We were definitely in the throes of it at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, now let's flip over and let's watch this for a minute. Zach, any words before we do this? Any thoughts?
Nah, I'm ready to watch this.
Bringing you along. Okay, yeah. Groovy. Cool, man.
You can maximize it too. Yeah, there you go. I figured you would, but.
Oops.
Are you sharing sound? I'm not getting a sound.
You're not getting sound. Shit. Let me hold on. Let me do this again.
Sometimes if you don't click share sound, you're hearing it because
you know me, Jeff.
You're hearing it because it's on your computer. I think you just stop share sound, share screen, go.
Hold on.
It's weird because in Haps it works the other way. You actually share a screen without sharing the sound, at least the way I'm set up. It's very strange.
Here we go. My bad.
It's all right. We're lucky we had Ace to be like, just click the little button that says share sound. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. We have no producer on this show, everybody. We produce for ourselves, just in case anyone's unclear.
Oh, man, this is something. It's 30 minutes. We don't have to watch the whole thing. We can bounce, too. Just tell me to bounce if you want to, but just watch this. It's so great.
Thank you so much for having us.
The red power tie.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give your YouTube a couple clicks of volume?
Yeah.
I think your volume's down on your YouTube. Oh, no, it's not.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mr. President, thank you for joining us.
It's better now.
We appreciate you taking the time, and we appreciate your commitment to answer our questions.
Sure.
We really appreciate that. Over the years, I've heard you talk about your adherence to a philosophy called positive thinking. This is the mantra that if you believe something, if you visualize it, then it will happen.
To an extent, I also think in terms of the downside.
Right.
I've been given a lot of credit for positive thinking, but I also think about downside because only a fool doesn't.
To what extent do you think that positive thinking mindset is suitable to handling the worst pandemic that we've seen in a century?
I think you have to have a positive outlook. Otherwise, you would have nothing without a positive outlook. I think we've done an incredible job between the ventilators and stopping very infected people from China coming in, meaning putting the ban on China, which frankly nobody wanted me to do, practically nobody, because it was very early in January. Then putting the ban on Europe, not an easy thing to do. When you put a ban on Europe, that's a big thing. We would have probably lost hundreds of thousands of lives more had I not done that. And all of the experts, every one of them, not one of them wanted to do it. They thought it was too severe. 3 months later, they're all saying, I'm glad you did it.
The criticism of you that is most prominent is about the communication. It's the public health experts saying that it needs to be based in reality. And they're saying that the wishful thinking and the salesmanship is just not suitable at a time when a pandemic has killed 145,000 Americans. And it's that I understand what you're saying, that people need to hear positive thinking. But, you know, for the past 5 months, it's been the virus is totally under control and the cases have been going up and the deaths have been going up.
Look.
But you've been saying it's under control.
Nobody knew what this thing was all about. This has never happened before. 1917, but it was a totally different, it was a flu in that case, okay? But other than 1917, there's never been anything like this. And by the way, if you watch the fake news on television, they don't even talk about it. But you know, there are 188 other countries right now that are suffering, some proportionately far greater than we are, okay? As bad as we are.
Very few.
Some proportionately greater than we are. Right now, Spain is having a big spike.
The charts
There
is
are
the funny
tremendous
part.
problems in the world. You look at
I'm looking for
Moscow,
the
look at
charts,
what's
Jeff.
going-
He waved in there
Right
somewhere.
away,
I get
it's a headline.
Mr. President, I want to talk about the federal intervention.
Excuse me, one thing I would say about
Yeah.
testing. Because we test so much, we show
I hate this
cases.
lie.
So we show many, many cases.
What a
We show
fucking idiot.
tremendous number of, I know you're smiling when I say that.
No,
but
but
I'm
come on, I
telling you.
mean, I've heard you say this,
Other
but
countries don't test like we do,
you know-
so they don't show cases.
just a couple of points on that. I wasn't going to continue on the testing, but you said it. So we're testing so much because it's spread so far in America.
We're
And
testing
when you
so much because we had the ability to test.
Okay,
Because we came up with
but
tests.
South Korea-
Jonathan, we didn't even have a test. When I took over, we didn't even have a test. Now, in all fairness.
Why would you have a test?
There was no test.
The virus
for
didn't
this.
exist. How would you have a
Excuse me, I was
test?
going to say,
Okay.
there was no test for this new. We didn't have a test because there was no test.
course.
In a very
Turns out the
short
World
order,
Health
we got
Organization
one
did have a
another
test, by
It
the
was
way.
broken the first
Many of those tests are now obsolete because we've,
Right.
it's called science, and all of a sudden something's better. But because we tested so many people, 55, 60 million people very soon, we get cases. You test, some kid has even just a little runny nose, it's a case.
Jesus
And then you
fucking
report
Christ.
many cases.
I'm
Then
sorry, I gotta
the
bounce it. I
world
can't fucking
lower
do
the
that.
Lower than
What is that?
Europe.
This is the best. Wait, I'm
That's the
sorry.
best.
Is
That's the best.
because we are so much better at testing than any other country in the world, we show more cases.
The figure I look at is death. And death is going up now.
Okay,
And it's 1,000 a day.
If you look at death.
Yeah, it's going
let's
up
look.
again.
Let's look.
Daily death.
Take a look at some of these charts.
I'd love
okay?
to.
We're going to look.
Oh
Let's
my
look.
And
god.
if you look at death.
Yeah.
per
It's started to go up
each
again.
one, well, right here, the United States is lowest in numerous categories. We're lower than the world.
Lower than
We're
the
lower
lowest in
than
the chart.
What is it?
Lower than the world.
In what?
Take a look,
You're lower than
What?
the world?
right here.
And what?
Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad.
Well,
Much worse than South Korea, Germany,
you
etc.
you can't do that. You
Replay that,
you have
replay
to
that.
go by-
I
you
will.
have to
Hold
go
on.
by where, look, here is the United States.
Look at this one.
You have to go by the
It's a
cases.
bar. It's a
Cases.
4-part
When
chart.
we have somebody. what
Just a
if
second.
this
I
is
gotta
one-
go back. Let me just bounce it to here. I don't even know where it is. Here.
Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad.
Well,
Much worse than South Korea, Germany,
you
etc.
can't do that. You have
Why
to go,
can't I do that?
you have to go by, where, look, here is the United States.
You can't even explain the stats he's trying to use.
Why not as a proportion of
It's
population?
just a big fucking lie.
When you have somebody that where there's a case, the people that live from those cases.
It's
Look at that graph.
Statistic to say if the US has X population and X percentage of death of that population.
You know what I noticed about that graph?
By the cases.
Well, look at South Korea, for example. 51 million population.
That graph has less detail than the ones that I made in like 20 minutes.
And of course, while you're watching it, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows this, but when you're talking about survivability per cases, okay, so our survivability once you have it, I mean, that's a stat that's interesting to discuss. But then the question is, are your case numbers anywhere proportionate to anywhere else in the world? And the answer is no. We were leading the world in cases. So it's not like you had less cases than everybody else and better survivability. You had way more cases than anybody else and a little better survivability. Like it's like the worst trade-off possible. Like someone literally took all the stats and said, here's one where we're good. Survivability, we're doing pretty good, which by the way,
color that and put that one on the top of the page.
Let's just give them the bar chart of the 3 worst countries for survivability in the US. So it's like probably like Somalia, Congo, just because some of those countries have terrible systems as a whole, and some other third world country, and then like America. Look, we've got twice the survivability of all these other places. It's like all these Trumpers that say that COVID's like 99.6% survivable. It's like you can't take 500,000 dead and make that number work with any statistic.
That's right.
You're just making it up. You can't. 500,000 deaths doesn't go into anything and give you 99.8. You'd have to have 500,000 Americans. It's like you're not even trying anymore.
But
you're not even trying.
Jeff, you're missing the point though. If you look at his graph or his bar graph right there, there is a multicolored pastel color palette.
It is beautiful.
How can you disagree with that?
It's beautiful. It's clear
the
that
USA is on top. The
probably
USA is on the top
or
line.
on the bottom. I would hope we were on the bottom with the lowest death rate of cases, but I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Well, and by the way, did you guys watch the doctors about this? That show, the CNN did the doctors with all the Redford and Gerard and all those people. They said the World Health Organization had a test early on. We chose not to take them. We never even asked for it. And then the other thing they said was very early on, information was coming from a bunch of other vectors. I mean, Burke says exactly what you think she'd say, and I told you she would say, which was, I stayed on board to be the voice of reason. If I left, who else would there be? But she discussed being very at odds with some source. Someone who's, of course, disappeared, who also needs to answer for his crimes, is Scott Atlas, who came in and immediately started talking about herd immunity and then not talking about herd immunity. You know, it was like his worst kept secret that he was pushing herd immunity while lying on public television about herd immunity.
For sure.
There was just and people talk about it on lots of different issues. He'd have these experts, they get together on panels. He'd leave, and all morning, apparently, he was talking to friends and family and whoever else was giving him political advice. You'd leave one meeting with, we should do X, Y, Z. And he'd come back the next afternoon. No, I'm hearing that's a really bad idea. And you wouldn't even know who you were arguing with. He had just spoken with a bunch of people that told him it was something else. So we were literally trying to run a pandemic by committee. It was absolutely
with this person.
This person, yeah. Who can't even explain his own stats he's trying to tout. Like you and I would be able to at least explain the stat. Like,
this is the best part, Jeff. We got to let it because Zach hasn't seen this yet.
You don't know that.
I do. It's on you think they're faking their statistics? South Korea?
I won't get into that because they have a very good relationship with the country. But you don't know that. And they have spikes. Look, here's
Germany low, 9,000.
Here's one right here, United States. You take the number of cases. Okay. Now look, we're last, meaning we're first.
Last, I don't know what we're first in.
Take a look. Again, it's cases.
Okay.
And we have cases because of the testing.
1,000 Americans are dying a day, but I understand on cases it's different.
But you're not reporting it correctly, Jonathan.
I think I am, but
if you take a look at this other chart, look, this is our testing, I believe. This is the testing,
Yeah, we do more tests.
No, wait a minute.
So much
stuff. You're just holding white papers.
And because we do more tests, we have more cases. In other words, we test more. Now take a look. The top one, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. The top, Jonathan.
If hospital rates were going down and deaths were going down, I'd say terrific. You deserve to be praised for testing, but they're all going up.
They very rarely talk.
60,000 Americans are in hospital.
If you watch the
1,000
news
dying
or
a
read
day.
the papers, they usually talk about new cases, new cases, new cases.
I'm talking about death.
Well, you look at
going
death.
up.
Death is way down.
No, wait. I'm going to go back. I want to stop here for a second and say something.
It was 2,500. It went down to 500. Now it's going up again.
Now, Jeff, what you said at the beginning of this is really critical, because I sort of accidentally said that it wasn't stressful maybe at this moment in time.
If you want to go, this was deaths per day. I've got that chart. I don't know if you want to drop yours. This is deaths per day. So what he just said was you were up over 2,000, you got down around 500, and you're back up to 1,000. That's absolutely what was happening.
That's where we were at.
That's where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, he's right. It was like 145,000. So keep in mind that by the time you get all the way out here, you're at 500,000. So
when you see Alter's face here, you understand that he's looking at that rise.
Right. In fact, at that time, they probably didn't know if we were going straight on up into a huge second wave.
Yep.
The second wave, if you may recall, we could go up and look at it, but it had a lot more cases but less death because we were testing more. And therefore, we had, at the beginning, you were basically testing the people that were dying. That's why the first curve was so big compared to how many cases you had. By the time you got to the second wave, we were testing more. We were doing more optional testing, or at least broader testing. I guess I don't know exactly where we were August 3rd. But the point is there were more people getting tested, and less of them were then hospitalized and dying. So yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, we were losing 1,000 people a day, and we were on the way, as I predicted. Out here January 10th, when we hit our high point, that was 3,400 a day. So we were, as bad as it was at 1,000 a day, we were third what we ended up getting to.
But when you see Jonathan Alter's eyes, that's what's
He's like, what?
He's like, what are you talking about?
I'm surprised he didn't just leave the country for good after this interview.
Much higher than where it is right now.
It went down and it went up again.
But now it's going down again. It's going down in Arizona. It's going down in Florida.
Nationally,
it's going down in Texas. Take a look at this. These are the tests.
It's going down in Florida?
Yeah, it leveled out and it's going down. That's my report as of yesterday.
Anyway, Mr. President, if I could change subject.
It is going down in Arizona.
Arizona it is. Texas has big problems.
And it spiked and it's now going down in Florida. It's evened out and going down in Florida.
I'll have to see those.
But you have to look at this. This is the number of tests compared
I
to the
don't
rest
deny
of the
your
world.
figures. You've done more tests by far than the rest of the world. I don't deny that.
Because we've done more tests, we have more cases.
You
can take
more
it back, check it out.
Mr. President, different subject. It's been widely reported that the US has intelligence indicating that Russia paid bounties or offered to pay bounties to Taliban fighters to kill American soldiers.
We find out today that may not be true.
You had a phone call with
that wasn't true.
Third. Did you bring up this issue?
Well, the intel's too weak to prove it, is what I got.
Things, and frankly, that's an issue that many people said was fake news.
Who said it was fake news?
I think a lot of people.
Well, I said it was fake
news. If you look at
news.
some of the wonderful folks from the Bush.
That they're arming the Taliban, Russia.
I want to move ahead.
He died 7 years ago. Somebody got a ballot for a dog. Somebody got a ballot for something else. You got
this is what I wanted to show. This is his ballot
now,
bullshit.
She grumbled about it and said all sorts of
grumbled. She wrote books about it.
She wrote books.
Don't use the word grumbled.
Fine,
but she wrote books about it.
That's fine, but I'm
and
just.
She got beaten
easy. I get it.
306 to 223.
I'm not disputing you beat Hillary Clinton.
That's a lot.
Listen, what I'm asking
is
now
we know.
President in the White House. What does that look like?
I'll tell you what it looks like.
Are you litigating?
Let me tell you what it looks like.
Okay.
So we have a new phenomena. It's called mail-in voting.
Not new.
Not new.
It's been here since the Civil War.
In terms of the kind of millions and millions of ballots, they've never.
It'll be bigger this year because of the pandemic.
Bigger, not bigger, massively bigger.
Yeah, because of the
pandemic. So they're going to send tens of millions of ballots to California, all over the place. Who's going to get them? I have a friend lives in Westchester County.
They send applications.
His son passed away. He had a beautiful, wonderful son, young man, passed away 7 years ago. He called me. He said, "I just got a ballot."
Probably
for
an
my
application.
son Robert. He died 7 years ago. Somebody got a ballot for a dog. Somebody got a ballot for something else. You got millions of ballots going. Nobody even knows where they're going. You look at some of the corruption having to do with universal mail-in voting. Absentee voting is okay. You have to apply. You have to go through.
You know what? Wait, pause this, Marty.
Absentee voting is good.
Yes, sir.
If I'm correct, Utah does have a universal voting system. I think this is where the beef with him and Romney comes from. He thinks.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Well, and I hate to point out the obvious for the about 50th fucking time, but
I I may be done with this, guys. That was fine. I had to.
Well,
what I don't understand is why his voter fraud commission in 2017 didn't illuminate these problems.
Yeah.
He had a whole committee that met, disbanded with no real findings. They basically rebranded the Heritage Foundation's big database of election fraud issues, which is like 1,400 issues, but it's like from 40 years of elections of all different levels. They're not all presidential. So he did a full investigation in 2017, but then by the time we got to 2020, the whole system's broken. And I mean, it's just classic Trump bullshit that it was all working in 2017 when his 2016 election was fraudulent because millions of illegals voted. That's why Hillary won the popular vote. He was going to apparently prove, which he of course could not because it was a lie. He had this whole voter commission, which again, apparently Utah, I know Colorado, they all had all universal mail-in. Everybody in the state mailed in. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly it gets to 2020. Oh, these ballots are a real problem. They're a huge source of fraud. Well, I mean, what someone should have just said was, where's your document from 2017 when you found this fraud? Why haven't you been talking about it for 3 years? Because the truth is, even if he politically knew it could hurt him to have all this mail-in ballots, he did nothing politically to stop it. He just waited until 2020 to complain about it, to preemptively get ready for his loss, And apparently, by the way, the long game may have been to adjust voter laws after he lost.
I may lose my power here. I don't know. Did you see that?
We'll carry the show without you.
Let her go. Yeah.
We just spent like half an hour talking about this, but he's talking about all the fraud coming out of California. There could be 10 billion votes of voter fraud from California. It wouldn't change the fact that the Electoral College is going to California.
That's
right. So that whole point on its own doesn't stand.
Right. California's going to be blue. The argument that, for example, Arizona went blue because of mail-in ballots, that's something that could be discussed. I mean,
I'll go back to that.
But again, by the way, if it goes blue because of availability, then what are you really trying to solve? You know what I mean?
The California comment, I believe, was a threat of the feigned idea that you will find a bunch of liberal lefties voting illegally in the mail from somewhere else, like Kentucky, because their Kentucky votes get sent to lefty California. To me, that's how I took that. It's code language. He always does that. He's code languaging people.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I would be less afraid of Californians voting by mail and much more afraid of them moving to your state, right?
Right. Yeah. They will change what's up. That's for sure.
And they're moving to Texas. I'll tell you that. But now the question is, are they conservatives? Are they conservative Californians or liberal Californians moving to Texas?
It's interesting.
I think it's liberals if you look at the trends, right? As you've seen Californians and New Yorkers come to Texas, Texas has gone bluer. So
I believe Californians have made Colorado more liberal.
Beyond, yes, absolutely. And the housing prices and all of those things. And at this point in my career, I'm looking back to California at some point going, is that a smart move? The only problem with moving back to California is moving back into the state taxes, which are so high.
Not to mention the high cost of living and extremely high cost of real estate.
Everything. Yes. Yeah. It's basically jumping back into the full tilt rat race going, do I want to do that ever again? I used to do it, but I'm not sure.
I've known several managers that came, for example, to Foot Locker in Junction City. Well, if you work at Foot Locker in Junction City, you live in Manhattan, Kansas, because that's a college town. It's just a nicer place to live than Junction City. Nothing really wrong. Junction City has Fort Riley. It's just a different type of town. It's much more blue collar, whereas Manhattan's much more professional town. Anyway, even Manhattan, that has relatively expensive real estate for sort of the middle of Kansas, these guys would move in from California. And like I remember one guy said, I own 4 houses in California. I can never afford any of them, but they all appreciated so much that every time I went to sell one, I went and bought a bigger one because I had this equity I needed to get rid of. And then they'd come to Manhattan, Kansas and buy like a mansion cash, more or less, or like a 5-year loan because they had so much money from their house in California that it was just, they couldn't believe it. So yeah, the difference in cost of living, there's some crazy things that happen. We can get back on topic real quick, but there's this huge mansion in Oklahoma. It's in the middle of nowhere. Somebody built this massive mansion. It was for sale for like $1.5 million, and it was like 20 bedroom, 10-car garage. It's all brand new Tudor construction, high roof, everything. And so we'd share that sometimes in our groups. Like these people from California are like, "What?" They're like, "I paid $1.1 million for a 3-bedroom ranch
in Roseville, California." Yeah.
What?
Hottest hottest market in the country right now is hottest real estate market, hottest town is
Dallas.
No, Zach, it's Fresno.
Fresno.
For God's sake.
The California
Who
real
wants to
estate
go to
values.
Fresno?
I'm telling you, Zach, you should really get on like Zillow and look for like houses for sale in Wichita, and you'll just blow your mind. Like for 1.5 million, you can have the nicest house for sale in Wichita, probably.
Yeah. I think we did that one time.
It's nice.
There.
You know, it's not. We're not talking about some 4-bedroom whatever. Like you can get a mansion in Wichita, Kansas for $1 million. Absolutely. Yeah. And in California, you literally could be a 3-bedroom ranch for $1 million.
Yeah.
But then I have to deal with Kansas politicians. So.
Well, you know, you take the
true.
good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have, you know, the facts of life.
Thanks. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Bring us
I was listening to some show theme songs last night as trivia.
That is all I had for tonight in terms of this. I just wanted to touch base on that because I'll tell you, that interview, while it was a highlight for a lot of us to look at the depravity and craziness of Trump in the summer, it was a really scary thing at the time to go, holy shit.
Yeah.
What if he's around? What if we have to 4 more years of this guy?
Just holding your breath every time you talk. Like, what's the dumb? What dumb thing is he getting ready to say? The good news is, historically, presidents, right, their popularity drops relatively quickly after they're not reelected. Like Obama's popularity dipped right after he didn't even run, but you know what I mean. He left office, your popularity dips. Basically, everyone remembers the X and thinks they sucked. And then you get down the road, and like what's happened with G.W. Bush, right? Bush 2, his popularity's come way up because he wasn't so bad when you get to look at Trump. I know Bush was bad, but you know what I'm saying, Zach. The point is, history is always harshest on someone right after they didn't get elected. So, you know, Trump's favorability rating now, I can't even imagine. It should hopefully be in the total toilet. But as it's history's only going to reflect even worse, because as time goes forward, everyone in the world can do what we just did, which is go back to some pivotal moment, looking for that Trump quote about something informational or exciting or powerful he said, and you just find a bag of dog shit. His speeches were always bags of dog shit, and the Trumpers were always telling us, you're watching the lamestream media, blah blah. It's like no. I watched the CNN coverage, but I watched the speech cover to cover, and it was dog shit. It was dog shit from start to finish, and not just because I disagree with him. I can't even figure out what he's trying to talk about, and so I think. History, I think the more the Republican Party clings on to this guy, just the absolute worst it's going to be. I mean, if he runs again in 4 years, think about all these nightly shows and daily shows and CNN and everybody else that every time Trump says anything, there's going to be 5 clips of him being the opposite and inarticulate at doing it. I mean, it's just he has too much tape of doing the wrong thing over and over and over. I mean, he is absolutely cancerous. And
he's pop culture. He's pop culture kryptonite at this point. Pop culture in any pop culture setting, it has a rise. It can have a long sustainability, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a fall. I.e., the Beatles, i.e., the Rolling Stones. They have to weather their career. Trump there is no longevity to this thing.
I'll say it again because nobody's listening. No Republicans are listening. They got to get out of this Trump boat. They just have to. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, earlier in the show, I kind of agreed with you, right? Saying that I do think that the Republicans, they can fall and completely be destroyed. But on the same note, Andrew Jackson is on their $20 bill.
He sure is. He sure is.
So
that's where we are. We're America. And that's what Trump taught us again, is that even with all of our prudish cancel culture motifs that we might try to employ in this life, man, we ain't that far away from some crazy politician saying, "Hey, kill the buffalo. Here's $1,000 a head," and people go, "Fuck yeah!" I mean,
we're kind of going back
to America, dude.
In the way we're going back to last show when we start going back over Andrew Jackson and some of those. Yes, looking back with our present view of their historical actions, they were abysmal and terrible, but they were judged by their contemporaries, and so I don't know that I really. I think.
Well, no. I would guess it was crazy.
His contemporaries thought Andrew Jackson were crazy too.
You know, the Trail of Tears.
I bet those people that would not understand. I bet those people would not believe Donald Trump. The people who criticized Andrew Jackson would be like, "What is this?"
I don't know about that. I think I think there was 2 pods.
I'd have to go back and read.
Pod.
I'd have to go back and read documents about him. I mean, I know he was Manifest Destiny and terrible. Like, I get it, but like, I mean, did he tweet Confefe and say he meant to do it? Did he call senators low IQ? Did he? I mean, just daily, just every day say something stupid.
Well, I mean, part of that is just the information, right? Like we have all the information now. Maybe he was doing this crap daily.
Well, but was once a month speeches just a bunch of blithering stupidity, or did he have a political agenda that we would disagree with wholeheartedly now? But he was able to still represent himself, right? Like he didn't just get up there and say, we're getting rid of the Indians because I hate them. I mean, he said something he said something xenophobic and white nationalist, I'm sure, but it was probably in the flow of consciousness that made some type of sense versus Trump.
He wasn't a Coke. You mean he wasn't a Coke brain? Yeah, no, you're correct.
You mean he was an effective politician, right?
Purple shoes, any book recommendations? I would say anything in the area. Anything in the era about that era from Marie Sandoz. She's one of the great historians of that era. I don't know if she wrote anything on Andrew Jackson, but she certainly wrote a lot on his Native American Indian policies at the time and the philosophy and the theology behind it, Manifest Destiny and other things.
I've been meaning to crack it for several months, actually I've had it for years.
Marie Sandoz is that name again.
Howard Zinn's People History of the United States, I think, is considered a relatively reliable liberal source of information. I've seen him speak. I haven't read his book, but I saw him speak, and I thought he was great. He's a bit in the Noam Chomsky realm, I think you could kind of say, but more in the politically active side of that.
Well, and if you go back and read some of the primary stuff that Lincoln was talking about as a young lawyer in Illinois in the 30s and in the 40s, it's interesting to hear, or I guess maybe not the 30s, but into the 40s. It's interesting to hear how he's already standing up against some of that Andrew Jackson stuff.
I wonder if it
was prevalent.
Zach, do you know, are any of the Lincoln Douglas debates?
That's it. Yeah.
Are any of the Lincoln Douglas debates on book on tape? Because I assume none of them were audio recorded because it was an era before audio recording.
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
I would not know.
Because those are supposed to be like the greatest debates of all time, are they not?
Yeah, and some people have done them. They've like reenacted them on.
I need to find them. I could probably just YouTube it. I need to write that down because I'm a huge Lincoln fan because I was born and raised in Illinois. I've been to his tomb and all that. He was a very interesting character. Like he basically got pulled back into politics after losing out of the state house, I think, because he just couldn't stand the Missouri-Nebraska Act or whatever, the Missouri Compromise, like the fact that they were allowing states to vote on whether they're going to be slave states.
Yep.
He was kind of like, I'm not so upset that there are slave states. I just don't understand why we're creating new states that are slave states. And that really is what got him back into it. Like
he saw the Union breaking down in that process, and he knew it was going to.
But I think more than a team sport, like I think he was like, we shouldn't be allowing. This is an evil that's existed, but we shouldn't keep. Why are we allowing new states to continue to perpetuate it? So he has and some of the stuff I've said this before on here, but his dad was killed in like a Native American raid. I'm sure it was a battle. I mean, I don't blame the Native Americans. His mom died from milk poisoning because the cows got into some poisonous plant. I mean, the era he grew up in, and he had something like 18 months of higher education, of any lead education through high school. He only had 18 months of actual teacher time in the whole time from up to being a high school senior. So he was, very self-educated. I mean, you think about that. Now, at that time, I'm sure high school education didn't include everything we currently have, but still, to educate yourself through high school is just wild. And, he went on to be a lawyer and a senator. I mean, I don't believe anyone ever doubted his intelligence. He was battling several ailments. They all think. They think he was. Oh my gosh! I mean, it just goes on and on. Like
the Lyceum Address is one worth reading. It's one of the greats.
I think he might have been a giant, but he might have also suffered from like rickets or something. Like it was just one of these things where it's like, oh my gosh, that era. And I believe he had 3 sons, and he outlived 2 of them, and his third died young after Lincoln died. So none of his sons lived to mature. None of them lived to be 30, I don't think. There's just so many things about Lincoln that were just so tragic. But hey, he was an abolitionist, that's for sure.
Maybe an unwilling one, even.
Yeah, I mean, he said several different things.
There's a lot of documentation that he wanted to free the slaves and then send them out of America. Mm-hmm. So he didn't want a mixed society.
He was not into equal rights. He thought slavery was bad. I believe the actual quote is he thought if he freed the slaves, they would voluntarily want to return to Africa. Right. He assumed that they would migrate themselves to some place that they'd feel more like welcome, kind of a thing. So yeah, he wasn't necessarily the greatest guy. He had said one time he'd rather us, be together and have slavery than divided without it. But then he also, when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, said he was never so sure he was doing the right thing as he did at the moment he signed it. So,
even that proclamation, it freed all the slaves that he had no control over. Right. Right. There was like 3 or 4 states that still had slavery. He didn't free them.
Well, he outlawed it on all federal territory first. And then the Emancipation says, yes, any part of the United States, which then the Civil War had to finish to make the southern states part of the United States, and then it freed them, correct? Well, it made them free anywhere that the North controlled, regardless of their origins and all that. I assume that helps.
No. The Emancipation Proclamation specifically said any of the slaves held in the usurping territories. So it wasn't like he did do the federal. He did free them on federal land, but he didn't free them on Union state land. He freed them on Confederate land, which he had no control over. Wow. So, I mean, obviously, slaves got freed more or less, but the Emancipation Proclamation, I think, has been a little overhyped than what it really was.
I thought it literally
also
says
the Emancipation Proclamation was it was a pop culture move. Everybody memorized it. Everybody knew it. Yeah. It was a unifying creed to move people. And I go back to this picture of leadership, again, dealing with it professionally, dealing with it watching our politics occur. Is great leadership that tells those who follow that they're doing a great job and make them feel great? Or is great leadership taking people unwittingly where they don't want to go and getting them there alive? And Lincoln proved that his great leadership was that. Even maybe taking himself into places he didn't agree with or wasn't ready for. But he recognized the thing he always held, that I've always believed, the thing he always held was that the magic of this thing is in keeping the Union together and keeping the rule of law together was the only real way that humanity could move forward in this experiment on this continent. And if it broke down, you go back to Hamilton's great fear, which is this thing becomes another Europe and you just got 10,000 years of bands of people running around killing each other on this continent forever. And that's always been the goal of the federal system, is to not have that happen.
All right. Just to point out a fact kind of tying this into DC statehood, one of the reasons why DC has such a large African-American population is because federal land was deemed free. So you had slaves escape from Virginia, and I believe Maryland had slaves as well. So you had them escape into DC. And so that's kind of one of the effects of that policy.
That's something.
That's interesting.
Right. And so in many ways, when you don't allow DC to have a voice,
it's all about it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Well, everybody, I appreciate you hanging in there. We've got a few folks still left with us. Folks will watch this show later on. We're glad you've been with us. We are America Heals. We're still doing this thing, and we might move over to Haps maybe next time, I think. Maybe on Thursday. What day is it today? Today Thursday? Jeff, on Sunday, should we go over to Haps and see what's going on? Just to give it a try.
Yeah, maybe. I think the one thing that Haps is doing that's strange is it's not simulcasting, I don't believe, anymore. I believe it just pops a link out to Twitter. I don't know, Zach, if you've tested that, but it was put in the box and giving a Twitter live. But I think the last couple times I did it, it just put a link to click to go to Haps.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing as well.
So we have 115 views on Twitter tonight. I mean, I hate to lose all those.
I didn't know that.
I hate to lose all those.
So let's keep doing that, and then we're on our YouTube channel as well. So
I might do apps a couple times this weekend. I'll let you know if it changes to actually simulcasting. But if it's not going to, I'm assuming Twitter has basically shut down their availability. They've said, I don't think we want Haps to be able to do that.
Yeah, that may be a good move too, because I mean, if we're getting those numbers here, we're noticing that we're getting folks to watch later on after this is done too, and I think that's part of the beauty of doing these kind of shows on Twitter, and they can just kind of live for a little while. But I would like to thank everybody for your retweets, for your likes, and for all the support you've given to us as we've done these 32 episodes and as we continue on. Tonight's been kind of a fun show. I didn't really know where to go earlier today until I heard about the collusion, and I was like, man, it is time to spike the football that we won and remind ourselves where we could have been and do some of that work right now, because we can't let this new time and where the Republicans are right now and whether Mitch wants the corporations or not, all that stuff is secondary to what we just lived through, and we cannot forget it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yep.
Zach, any final words tonight, or words of wisdom, or words of caution?
I'll use this as a opportunity. If for people watching now, people watching after this, watch the next episode. I think Marty and I talked about we might be doing. I think we're going to be doing foreign policy. So if you're interested in that, if you want to know that, definitely tune into the next episode talking about. I think especially the Afghanistan war and everything else that Biden's been doing. So tune in on Sunday.
I think we also will be talking about Asia. If we're talking foreign policy, we'll be deep into Asia as well, because there's so much going on over there with the Navy. And
all up in that Asia.
All up in that. So, Jeff, any final words or words of warning? I like that.
I don't know. I guess I would just say in general, to cover a lot of different topics, if you hear somebody complaining about injustice, maybe hear them out. Just a general, we've entered a time in life where people call out about injustice and half of America says, shut up. Maybe just hear them out. You might still not agree with them, but why not hear them out?
Good word. Word of service. I like it. That's really what it is, right? Serving each other, listening to each other, helping each other out. And
if you had a complaint, you'd want to be heard out and at least understood. You don't have to agree with me, but I would want to be at least heard and understood, even if you don't, want to pick up a poster
every time
and walk with me, right?
We all do. Everybody does. So, All right, everybody, have a great night. Thanks much, and we'll catch you on Sunday night. Peace.